earlier before we started recording, you were talking about Brad Holmes, and you had some really strong opinions about Brad Holmes.
Concerns, not opinions, concerns.
What are your concerns with Brad Holmes? Why are you skeptical about Brad Holmes? Because he's
I'm
done
not
a lot of.
I'm not skeptical though, JT. I don't want to miss. I don't want to because I realize that it's the way things are worded that gets people to think a certain way. I'm not skeptical of Brad Holmes. I am critical of the things that Brad Holmes have done in terms of resolving the biggest issue with the Detroit Lions. If you were to go back to the previous coach regime and the general manager before he came and ask every Lions fan and every media person what is the worst part of the Detroit Lions, they would have told you defense. They'd have said under Matt Patricia, all 3 of those years, the defense was hot garbage. Right? He comes in. He's been here for 2 years. This is his 3rd year. The worst part of the Detroit Lions is what? Defense. And so when I bring that up because I watched a fan base bring out pitchforks and flamethrowers and say fire Dan Campbell. And I'm thinking, you do realize Dan Campbell's an offensive guy. You do realize that the offense was a top 5, at one point, top number 1 scoring offense. I said, but when you go through and you look at when they went 1-6, it was because of the defense. You score as many points as you did against the Eagles and you give up more. You scored as many points as you did against the Seattle Seahawks and you give up more. And you steady do this repeatedly. You give up a big play twice to the Vikings to lose that game. Don't even get me started on the New England game. We can't talk about that. And when you needed a win to give you a chance to get to the playoffs, what do? You give up 241 yards of rushing in the first half against the Panthers. And so the biggest issue has been defense. And when I look at the last 2 drafts and the people who say that, oh, you couldn't fix the defense in one draft, you're lying. You're absolutely lying. To the people who say, oh, our salary cap was messed up, you're lying. That's another lie. These are myths. I keep the receipts. We had cap space. We had the ability to make moves. And my issue with Brad Holmes is, why do you keep investing in hurt players on this prove yourself to me stuff? Like, what is this? Every person he brings in has a knee injury. Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not being funny. That's the reality. They come in with ACL injuries all the time. And he gets them to come here, and people think, oh, these are cheap deals. But most of them, $10 million for one season? For DJ Chark, who came off of a knee injury? That's a lot of damn money. You know, we were paying these dudes. People forget. I watched all those in the den videos where you got Dorsey over there calming him down when he was getting ready to trade up for Sewell. When it was clear to everybody who's paying attention that Sewell was not being drafted before any of those people. He was getting ready to trade up for Levi Onwuzurike, and Dorsey stopped him on it. Like he gets real antsy. And then what happens is the Lions start taking L's, and the first thing everybody wants to do is go to the easy target. Oh, you got a meathead coach, and he clock management and blah. What are you talking about? Coaches get fired when their side of the ball don't perform. Don't believe me? Go talk to the Vikings. There's a reason why Mike Zimmerman is not there anymore. The Vikings defense stopped performing. He had to go. Don't tell me that it's not like that when I look at the Denver Broncos, who go out and get an offensive coordinator and hack it, and they take all this big chances and this big swing to get Russell Wilson, and your offense sucked. He had to go. So at the end of the day, there's examples, type of examples. When your side of the ball is not performing, they usually get rid of you. And it happened with the Lions. Matt Patricia is supposed to be a defensive guru, the rocket science. But for 3 years under his belt, the defense was hot garbage.
I'll play devil's advocate with this one, okay? Because, like, I hear your criticisms. You feel me? But I do think, like, we do have to give Brad Holmes some credit with how he's drafted, and not just with Aiden Hutchinson. James Houston out of What's that university? Jackson State. There you go. He was a pleasant surprise. I don't really think too many people expected him to have the kind of rookie season that he had. So it's like that was kind of a late round gem that Brad Holmes was able to draft. Yeah, I hear you on the fact that he has, a weird fetish with bringing in guys who have like injury history on prove it deals. And the whole 1 year prove it, try to find the bargain, try to find the whole upside thing doesn't really pan out most times in free agency. But with Jameson Williams, though, I think, I probably would have traded up for him if I knew that I was going in. Well, not trade up for him, but I probably would have drafted him if he was on the board, with the fact that, I'm going into a season where, I would love to make the playoffs, but I'm still having that rebuild mentality. So I'm willing to wait for a guy like Jameson Williams to come around because I know what that potential is going to look like. And when Jameson Williams got on the field, even though he played sparingly, the impact wasn't huge. It's like he had a good amount of flashes that show you, hey, okay, we see what this guy can be if he reaches his full potential. And Brad Holmes, he has made some questionable signings, some that haven't panned out. His free agency signings, like you alluded to, Mike Hughes earlier, didn't really work out. But I think the rookie draft class that he brought in last year was pretty solid for the most part. I think with Brad Holmes, I wouldn't say like I'll be more critical of him. I do think if I had to grade him on a scale of A through F, I probably would give him a B, not a B minus or a B plus. I'll give him a B. I think he's done a pretty good job, at least building up the young core that the Detroit Lions have. What's your thoughts on that?
I won't disagree with your grading, right? But let's look at the reality. You go up and you trade up 20 spots, give up draft capital to take a receiver who couldn't even help you, who you technically didn't even need. You still had the number one scoring offense, and he wasn't even on the field. Wasn't used at all. Wasn't useful at all. Yeah, he had a few splash plays, but you know what? I hate to break it down like this, JT, but you've grown at this point, so I can be a little bit more rated R. Even a blind squirrel gets a nut. Right? Everybody gonna get opportunity, right? And I'm not trying to downplay it, but the reality is to sit there and look, and you in a position, you trade up 20 spots, and you go out and get an offensive player that we not only didn't even use, dropped a lot of passes, showed some signs of divaness. Then you want to get critical about him in the offseason, like, oh, he's, come on now. Meanwhile, your defense is getting gashed. Meanwhile, you still needed a linebacker. And I would have much rather had Devin Lloyd over having a guy like Jameson Williams. Why? Because you gave up 241 yards in the first half against the Panthers. And don't get me started on all the other plays that you gave up on long runs against other opponents. Your linebacker room is about as strong as a alcoholic beverage at Chuck E. Cheese. It was not going to do anything for you. And I'm just being honest about it. And so you took that receiver after you just re-signed Josh Reynolds, after you had Amon-Ra St. Brown, after you added DJ Chop. You still had Khalif Raymond. You rid out and re-bought back Trinity Benson. You still had Quintez Cephas coming off an injury, and you go and draft. Well, I just couldn't pass up the talent. Okay. So I go back and I ask you this question, JT, right? Not saying that what you said was wrong, but you was playing devil's advocate. Do you expect Jameson Williams to be better than Calvin Johnson?
Nah,
me neither. I don't either.
I will say this though. I did have Jameson Williams graded out as my number one wide receiver. And if you look at my wide receiver rankings, my QB rankings, RB rankings, most of them are pretty solid for the most part. And if you watch, some of my videos about prospect or, like players who I really like that teams drafted, such as Jack Jones, cornerback out of Arizona State that New England drafted in the mid portions of last year. He ended up being one of the best rookie cornerbacks in the league. Nobody really talked about him. It's like, I think the potential of Jameson Williams is that he could be one of the best receivers in the league because we know that speed kind of kills, and speed is something that a lot of people are looking at. And I just look at the upside for Jameson Williams, which I am expecting a big season out of Jameson Williams. I'm not one of those people that's going to make excuses for Jameson Williams if he doesn't go out and he shits the bed this year. Like, I'm gonna just be straight up honest with you. 2023, this year, I'm expecting Jameson Williams to have a Pro Bowl caliber season and at least over 1,100 yards.
No, listen, if you get that kind of expectation, then as a fan, I'm like, cool. I expect you to have that. But whenever I hear people do this hype over Jameson Williams, I ask them, is he going to be better than Calvin Johnson? And nobody wants to say yes to that. And so if he's not better than Calvin Johnson, then let's hold our horses acting like we just stole something. We didn't steal nothing. We could have got Pickett, who went to your team. We could have got him and been just fine. Just fine. Right? And again, the worst part of this team, 3 years in under Brad Holmes, was, well, we're gonna say the third year because it's just his third year, but it's still the defense. Most of the games you lost last year was due to the negligence of the defense. And that makes it 5 years of neglecting the defense. And so my only critical thing with him is I would rather he address the defense appropriately. That's all it is. Last year, I was screaming, take cornerback, take a safety, take those guys. Then Kirby Joseph come in, get a few interceptions against Aaron Rodgers, and everybody crowned him. And then he turned right around the next week and get torched by a tight end that nobody really talked about. Like, I wish I could make this stuff up, but I'm not. This is just the reality. Well, he's a rookie, Luke. Okay, cool. But so is Sauce Gardner. Well, everybody ain't Sauce Gardner. I know.
Yeah, Jack Jones looked pretty good.
Jones, Tyreek Woolen. That's what I'm saying. Keep going. You can go down the list. I don't want to hear this rookie talk. Because at the same time that these people want to tell me, oh, he was a rookie, I don't hear that rookie talk from Malcolm Rodriguez. And I'm telling you right now, this is how you know the linebacker room was weak. Malcolm Rodriguez won't start on no. If you looked at the season last year and the rosters were set for the 53-man roster, Malcolm Rodriguez wouldn't have been one of the starters, only on the Detroit Lions. And so my attitude to it is, you know, I'm always going to be on the wait and see. I want to see him really fully, impactfully address the defense. What he does is he gets real cheap on the defense, and he always gives a really good weapon to the offense. He doubled down on Jared Goff when he restructured that deal and gave him guaranteed money where we could have let him go and picked up maybe over $40-something million in cap space, you know. But he doubled down on him. He been doubling, tripling down on Jared Goff by adding everything he could to that man. He's giving him everything. Meanwhile, I have to watch Aaron Glenn figure out how to make chicken noodle soup with tomatoes. And I'm trying to figure out why are we screaming fire the head coach? That's my only criticism of Brad Holmes. He has not been perfect. I'm not going to say that. Nobody is. But I'd be damned if I come in and look at a team and say the worst part of the team is defense, and I invest all my high-end energy into the offense. And that's what he did.
You think he was saying, well, it's like, it's not like he hasn't attempted to improve the defense, but I get what you're saying.
But he hasn't, though. He hasn't.
But what about this, though? He definitely could have whiffed on James Houston. Now,
so let's talk about the James Houston thing, right? Because I love that we have to talk about these late picks and stuff, right? And I get it, right? James Houston was a pleasant surprise. I love that. It was a great thing. Malcolm Rodriguez for a lot of people was a pleasant surprise. I love that, right? But now look at it. You know, for all the pleasant surprise that James Houston was, what do you see the media and everybody still mocking to the Lions? Edge rusher. Now they want to act like James Houston can't be an every down edge rusher. I don't know why, but that's what they're doing. So my thing is, yeah, we can give him credit for that, but for every guy you name like that, I can give you a guy he drafted that you can go, oh, like Levi Onwuzurike. Right? You want to tell me about Malcolm Rodriguez? Let's talk about Iffy. Right? So, yes, you're not going to hit on every pick. I get that. Right? But what we're doing is we're choosing to selectively pick the best parts. I'm looking at the big picture. And what I'm saying is even the guys that you name are late round picks. The highest pick that he took for the defense came in Aiden Hutchinson. Prior to that, the highest pick that he took for the defense came in Levi Onwuzurike. When you go to the free agency, the biggest free agency defensive acquisition he added was who? I'll wait. But watch this. Let's flip it to the offensive side of the ball. Name the big offensive acquisitions that he added. You can go down the list, chart. You can go down. You can go and just in free agency, David Montgomery. He took a chance on Terrell Williams. Perryman, he brought him in. He was bringing in. These are all hurt people, all scraps. He traded for Trinity Benson. Right? He's added so many things. He brought in Jamal Williams. Right? You can add all these things in. I'm not just looking at the draft. I'm looking at the big picture. I'm looking at free agency. I'm looking at trades. I'm looking at the draft, the whole picture. And to me, my criticism comes from that. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't hate the man. It's not that. I just don't like when people get to saying fire the coach. And I'm trying to figure out, well, who are these defensive players that you like? You didn't get them until year 2. Right? You get them in year 2, and it's like, okay, cool. But
I get you.
All his picks, you look at his first draft, who was his top pick? His first draft.
That was 3 years ago, right? That was Jeff Okuda, wasn't it?
Nope.
Was
that's Quinn. I want you. See what I'm saying? And as a guy who covers the whole NFL, I know you be paying attention to this stuff. So I'm asking you, who was his first pick?
Man.
And the reason I'm asking you that question is because it's going to show you something that you're going to go, oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
Man, I can't even remember. You got to tell me.
All right. So if you go through and you work to look at Brad Holmes' very first draft, where he got a chance to make his very first pick, he took Penei Sewell, a guy who was supposed to be a perennial left tackle. He brought him in and made him a right tackle. And in most circumstances, people would have scalded him for that. And in most people, the Lions fans who did it was like, oh, you know, you get him, you can trade Taylor Deck. And I'm like, no, you complete the offensive line by getting him and let him play right because he can play right. And then when it's time for Taylor Deck, yeah,
like
and when Taylor Deck, go ahead.
Like a lot of people got this misconception that like you can draft a right tackle and a left tackle and they can play whichever spot just because they just look at it as offensive tackle. But I was talking to somebody who plays offensive tackle and he was like, you know, even a lot of people just look at it as playing tackle, but making that transition between the opposite sides isn't that easy. It's kind of foreign a little bit because people look at it, the casuals look at it as, oh, it's offensive tackle, but it's different technique. It's like learning how to write with your opposite hand that you're not that strong with.
Yep. And so again, I don't scold him for doing that. I'm just showing you that he invested into the offense heavily. He did. Because after he did that year, after he took Tyrell Williams and all the other people, he then I wanted Amon-Ra St. Brown in the second round. I thought that, you know what, it's no way he's going to slip. He slipped to the 4th. I went, oh my God. When we took him, it's video evidence. I lost it. I was so happy, so excited. Him and Derek Barnes. Now, Derek Barnes, in my opinion, is not being used the way that I would expect him to be used, but I get it. And I'm starting to realize that a lot of these players that people want to say are not good or not bust, they're not busted. They're not good. They're just not being used the same way that they were used in college that made you want them in the first place. But when you go through and you look at it, he's invested in the offense. And his idea where he drafted all these players. These are all defensive players. I don't care. You took it. I don't care. Your acquisitions, for most part, you built up the offense. And you did that heavily in the first year. And you can't tell me the second year he built up the defense because that's not what happened. He drafted who he drafted, and he added a bunch of scraps. How the hell does Alex Anzalone keep getting a job with us? Like, I want to know what pitches he got. How does Will Harris get a job with us? You know?